guys. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. I'm Colette Peterman, People Success Leader at Palmeral Partners, and I'm so excited to bring you a very special presentation today. We're going to be talking about actionable analytics and the future of BI applications with Dan Donovan, partner at Palmeral Partners. Now, before I bring Dan on, I've got a question for everybody. Are you still spending too much time in spreadsheets? I'd love to hear your answer in our comments. If you can just comment that below. And throughout the presentation, if you have any questions for Dan, just hit up our chat box there, ask your questions, and we will reach back, grab some, and ask Dan here on the show. So thank you to Kate Strotney for giving us this time. And we are going to bring on Dan. So Dan just moved from New York to California. So Dan, how's the weather there in California? And if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and what we'll be learning today.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Dan Donovan. As Colette mentioned, I am the newest partner at Pomerol Partners. I joined about 4 months ago, and my remit at Pomerol is really around product development and starting to take some of the experiences that we've had with our clients over the years and start to build some more technology products out of the things we've learned from those experiences. Yes, I did recently move from New York to LA. I live in Santa Monica now. It's LA cold here, Colette.
LA cold.
So it's
Yes.
But that only lasts a couple of weeks, and I'm sure it'll be warm and sunny again.
Perfect.
So thanks everyone for joining. Thanks to Kate for letting us take over the show. And what are we talking about today? So for years now in the world of data and analytics and BI, we've been bombarded by these kind of hype cycle topics, right? So there are things like, big data was one of them. Self-service analytics was one of them. There are a lot of these things we sit through. We read a lot of articles, with blog posts and things like that, and go to webinars with, kind of sensationalized clickbaity titles like actionable analytics and the future of BI applications. What does all that mean? So if you think back to the dark ages, when we were doing reporting, right? Everything was very static. We all know this story. Then there was the kind of promise of self-service analytics. It was going to keep everybody from going off and doing their own thing in Excel hell and bring us all together in this nice new world of self-service interactive analytics. So we got there, and most of us are now working in environments with some form of self-service analytics, or at least more modern visualizations and a little deeper understanding of our data than we had before. However, the real goal of all of that and being able to immerse yourself in your data and take action based on the insights that you're gaining through that analysis and et cetera, hasn't really been realized in most organizations today. So the question that we kind of planted there at the beginning of the show, do you still spend too much time in spreadsheets, really comes from this idea of, okay, how do we take what we're doing in our analytic applications and keep people from just extracting that data into a spreadsheet, doing their own analysis, and then kind of either emailing that spreadsheet off to someone, or maybe pushing that back into the data pipeline so that eventually it gets loaded back into the source systems and the updates are made there. How can we turn that into this kind of dream that we've all been talking about for 10 years of this more collaborative environment where everyone's looking at the same information?
Reason we're honest with you, I think a lot of people, myself included sometimes, are still living in the dark ages of spreadsheets. I mean, I think more people than we realize.
Absolutely. So, I mean, as an example, I've done a lot of work in financial services. Before I joined Pomerol, I was with EY for 5 years as the CTO of a regulatory reporting platform for financial services. And before that, I led the financial services vertical for a data analytics software company. And even in, these institutions of our financial systems, the big banks and asset managers, lots of things are still done in spreadsheets. And
Yeah.
the reason I said that the title of this presentation is a little bit sensationalized, we're never going to get entirely away from that, right? I mean, not in the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
The point is, why are we still having this conversation after 10 years or 12 years of everybody implementing all of these analytic applications and trying to drive everyone into, much better data environments and much better analytic tools? Why are we still talking about this, and why are people still doing that? I think part of the reason is that in the sort of dawn of the self-service analytics era, making things actionable from within your analytic applications was hard. And so, people were a little bit afraid to, one, put that power of taking action from analytics applications out there to a broader group of users. And also just a lot of, especially smaller organizations, didn't have the resources to have a development team that's going to work on these things, or, that sort of thing. We've now moved into a world where all systems are much easier to interconnect with each other, right? We have rich sets of APIs out there. Lots of applications, even core applications, have moved to the cloud where they can all talk to each other. And our analytics applications also have matured to the point that they're now fairly easily extensible to add functionality. A lot of people are working in more mashup environments where they've built web apps out of several different visualizations or analytic tools, and the data environment is a lot richer. So what I want to do is I'll walk through a quick demo of a very simple use case. So this demo that you're going to see, it happens to be in Qlik Sense, but your analytic environment might be different, and that's fine. At Pomerol, we have developed a Writeback extension for Qlik Sense, which allows you to interact in different ways and with potentially with external systems. So
cool. I will go ahead and bring up that web app on the screen. I'll bring that up. I'm going to go off stage for a minute. I'll let you take away. When we come back, we're going to take some questions from the audience, and I already see some popping up. So excited to see those. Keep filling that chat box. I really want to know about spreadsheets, who's guilty of the dark ages, and we'll take it away with the web app. All right, there you go.
Thank you, Colette. And apologies, everyone. The feedback I'm getting from StreamYard here is lagging a little bit, but I will try to keep up here. So the application you're looking at on your screen is a pretty standard kind of dashboard, right? It's a sales pipeline dashboard, in this case for a construction company. And as I mentioned, this is a very kind of simple and straightforward example, but so this dashboard itself is great, right? I can see all of my open sales opportunities. I can play around with the data. I can see them by total value, or in this case, since this is a pipeline analysis, maybe I want to look at the weighted value. And as an analyst or as a user, I mean, I can group and sort and filter and look at whatever numbers I want to pull out of here. I can easily filter things by name, all the things that by client name. So all of the things that we're used to doing now in our analytics world are here, right? So it's a good dashboard. One of the issues of one of the things that is just a fact about the paradigm of these self-service analytic applications is that they tend to be very read-only, right? So if I'm presented with this data and I'm a sales manager and I need to pull together some numbers to report up to the regional manager, or if the regional manager is going to be looking in here and I need to just go through and ensure the data quality of this thing. If I see something in an opportunity that I know has changed, or if I need to update this, generally that would mean going to another system. So I might swivel over to Salesforce or my CRM system and make some updates there. And then I have to wait through the whole data refresh cycle. So there's probably some kind of extraction process from Salesforce that feeds things into a data mart, and then the data mart, my BI applications might be built on top of that. And I have to wait for all of that data work to happen before I'm going to see the results here. So if I'm interacting with my team or with my management live and trying to look at this and have our forecast call or whatever, I don't have time to wait for all of that to happen, right? So what do? I pull all of this out into a spreadsheet. I make my updates, and I send right before the meeting, I send the spreadsheet out and say, hey guys, ignore what's inside the analytic application. I'm going to speak from this spreadsheet during our meeting, or something similar to that. So wouldn't it be nice if we could, update this data right in here and have have our analytics application take care of all of that for us? So that's kind of what we've enabled through this Writeback extension. If I just select one of these opportunities, in this case, our customer called Bubblebox, we have our forecast data here for what this opportunity looks like. And now I can click here on Update Sales Ops, and it's going to bring up our Writeback extension here. So I can now go in and I say, let's say I know that these guys are actually moving forward quicker than we thought, but they've cut the scope of some of the work that we're going to be doing. So if I go in and change this, let's say I know that this is now going to be $30,000 worth of hours, and we're going to have an associated drop in the materials cost. Some of these other things might change. Let's update the close date. This data is getting a little old now. Let's just put it in February, and but now I know the probability is higher, so I'm going to up that to 50%. You can have permission enabled kind of manager approval here, or anything in the data that you want to change, and updates based on call 12. So I can make all those updates, and then if I hit save here, what's going to happen is that Writeback extension is going to push those updates right directly into the data. And then once it reloads, I can see that here. And if I clear out my filter, now all of the numbers in my dashboard have been updated. So everyone is now looking at all of the information that is dependent on that number has been updated with the changes that I just made. So again, a very simple example that just shows how even just being able to edit the data and make updates to the data in this analytic environment is very powerful. So that keeps me out of spreadsheets and disconnected analytics and all the things that we've been talking about for 10 years. Where is this going, or what else could we do with this now? I mean, really, things have matured to the point where it's not only about use cases where updating the data or doing this kind of scenario modeling and what if, answering what if questions with the data are important and getting easier, but also connecting to external systems. So let's say that I wanted to actually, be able to take some actions from an analytic application in an external system like a CRM system or an ERP system. You can enable that in the same way, right? Really anything that you could accomplish through API calls or some other kind of electronic interaction with external systems, you can now build into your applications in the same way. And what's different now than having this conversation 5 years ago is that the technologies are such that you can do a lot of this in a low code or no code way. So you no longer need a team of developers to build a custom application to do these things. I mean, if we continue with the example of our Qlik Sense Writeback extension here, those of you who are familiar with building Qlik Sense applications, that extension just shows up as something you can drag and drop in and configure as someone building out one of these analytic applications, right? So there are a lot of implications of doing things like that, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But the fact of the matter is that what's different now is that whole supporting technology environment has matured to the point that this is no longer a huge development or software engineering task to build this kind of functionality into your analytic applications. So that's all I really wanted to show in the demo environment. I mean, you know, the summary is kind of that.
Okay. Do you want to show anything else, or are we good to take some questions? We've got a lot of questions coming in.
Yeah, sure. We're good to
As
take
you're
some.
going. We'll start with the easy one for you, Dan, first. Why did you join Pomerol?
Why did I join Palmeral? Well, that's a good question. So my career, most of my career has been in product software companies, right? I've done a lot of different things in those companies. The last 5 years that I was at EY was a little bit different for me, but I was, you know, still the CTO of a platform that was a product at EY. And when I left EY, I took a few months off. I have a 2-year-old daughter, so I spent some time with her. And, you know, obviously we were contemplating moving across the country. And so some of that was personal. Some of it was also professional, because I wanted to take the time to really understand what I wanted to do next. And I have been familiar with Pomerol for quite some time, about 10 years or so. And, you know, I've always been a big fan of the work that our teams accomplish, and the way that Pomerol have kind of expanded from just building these BI and analytic applications into deeper kind of data engineering projects and things like that. And when the managing partners let me know that they were thinking about starting to build products, I just found it to be a very attractive kind of environment for me to come into and help lead that effort into a new world for Pomerol. Honestly, I'm more of a startup guy than a $1 billion company person. So that was part of it.
Definitely has a different feel to it, and it's awesome. It's been awesome since you've been here. I think you started with us in August, and just helping us like grow our products and help develop them and bring them to market. It's an exciting time for Pomerol. So, all right, here we go. This is questions from Susan. Do you think that there's a lack of education and users can sometimes be intimidated by some tools that are out there? And like, what would you say to those users?
Yes, I mean that's a great question and a good point. I think that we're running into, especially now that, you know, this whole idea of analytics and the way that analysts work has changed a lot in the last 10 or 15 years, to the point that, you know, people who are coming into the workforce now might be very comfortable just jumping into an environment like this. They're used to more technology and things in their whole span of schooling and career and all of that. And people who were, you know, have done things different ways before are suddenly kind of inundated with all of this technology and all of this data. And, you know, it may put people in an uncomfortable place. People in both of those groups, those of us who've been around for a while and also people coming straight into this environment. I think that the way to address that is through, you know, it's not just training and familiarization, but it really is about socializing this culture of data around an organization, and making people feel comfortable, and also putting them in an environment where they're not afraid that they're going to break something by clicking here, right? So I think it is an issue, and I think that is one of the things that keeps people pulling stuff out and putting it into Excel, because that's what they know, right? So, you know, through a combination of awareness and driving adoption of these things and really building it into our corporate cultures, those are the only ways that I've seen people successfully address that broad group of users that are out there with completely different experiences and different perspectives on what all of this means.
Well, that totally makes sense. For some of these people at these organizations that aren't super technical, I know a lot of them are afraid that they're going to break something. Like that is a genuine concern with using new tools that'll create this huge domino effect. And it's kind of, I think you just already answered this, but George was wondering your best tips for really enticing the end user to explore more in general.
Yeah, this is also a great question. So when I mentioned kind of driving adoption of these things, there are a few things that I've seen through the years that have been successful. One is one that sometimes people don't think about, but celebrating the wins of analytics. So if somebody finds something really insightful or really cool out of one of your existing analytic applications, or just some good data story that people can relate to, if you celebrate those things, then people are like, oh, that's cool. I wonder what I can find in my data, and they start digging in more and seeing the data as more of an opportunity rather than like, oh my God, I have to get this report out for this meeting, right? Another thing is by, incorporating some design into your analytic applications. So, most of us don't have the luxury of having a full-time, UX designer. But if you can incorporate some of those principles of user experience into the analytic applications that you're building, we live in a much more graphical, dynamic, interactive world now in all of the applications that we use. And so if it's something that somebody really has a delightful experience and wants to spend 5 or 6 or 8 hours a day in that application working, they're going to have a much more immersive kind of experience and want to interact with it more than if it's, a couple of pie charts and a table that they're going to export to Excel anyway.
Yeah, that's true. And that's funny because somebody also did ask and say, and George again here, would some of these people just prefer to export all of this into Excel anyways?
Yes, some people would prefer to export this.
Isn't that not really the point of using the Writeback, right?
But for a lot of reasons that have again been part of the conversation in this area for 10 or 15 years, we don't always want them doing that, right? It leads to inconsistencies. It leads to lack of governance. It leads to losing control of the accuracy and precision of the numbers that you're using to make business decisions. And so the more that we can encourage people not to do that, generally the more consistent, or at least the more our data and the numbers we're using to make decisions will adhere to our data policies, right? And when I use words like that, people think of big Fortune 500 companies or large financial institutions having these massive data governance policies. That it's true in any organization. You have implicit or explicit data policies, even in a small business. And so when we want to drive people towards adherence to those that will increase the accuracy and the reliability of the numbers we're using to make business decisions, we want to try to keep them from going rogue and doing their own thing. But yes, George, you will always have, diehards who are, I can do this in Excel in 5 minutes. Why would I spend an hour learning something new?
All right. But to your point, what you're saying about making it really a part of the corporate culture, Sean here was saying also that you need some kind of champion within your organization. Do you agree that to kind of lead that analytics initiative and kind of get everyone on the same page and comfortable?
Absolutely. I think a champion to do those things I was talking about that drive adoption, right? To lead those efforts, to make sure we're finding interesting use cases and interesting insights that we've gleaned from our data, and really being the champion and the cheerleader to get that message out. Like, this is why we're doing this, right? So people need to understand why it's worth the effort for them to change what they're used to doing and start doing something new, right? And so I think a champion to lead that effort is a key part of how you get that message out.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a great point, Sean, because even if you have all the best intentions, if you don't have that person getting everyone on the same page and on board, it's never a good situation there. So this is a little bit more of a specific question next. We might need to bring the app back up. That's up to you. But George was wondering about adding action buttons. And I like this idea, adding a button to trigger an action. Are we able to do that?
Yes. So look, the application I brought up is a very simple use case, right? The actual way that these things work, and the example I showed is pretty specific to our Qlik Sense Writeback extension, right? But these types of extensions, and especially as people are working more and more in a mashup web app kind of environment, I mean, what's behind that button can be a component that makes API calls to other systems and things like that, right? So as long as the user that's logged into that analytic application has the right permissions and things that their user context can go with them and take those actions in external systems, there are lots of ways that you can set things up to configure functionality within analytics applications that actually take actions in other systems, right? There are a lot of use cases. I mentioned a couple of, actually affecting changes or creating things in a CRM system or an ERP system. You can imagine, a simple case is being able to raise a service ticket, like in a workflow system, like ServiceNow or similar, by taking action on something you've seen in your analysis in your analytical application. There are a million and one things you might want to do, right? How difficult it is to implement those depends on your IT environment. It depends on user things and governance policies and lots of things. But technology-wise, it's actually fairly easy to implement those kinds of actions in these analytic applications now.
So you're saying that there's a chance.
Yeah.
Okay. And that you actually brought up a good point that I'm curious about. How exactly is this governed? So if I am, ahead of a large organization, I don't want everyone having access to the same information maybe here. Is there a way to control that?
Sure. So again, the user context can go with you here, right? So if you are logged in as a user into this analytic application, you don't want everybody to have the right to take all of these actions in external systems or even update the data. Everybody, it's no better than everybody doing their own thing and trying to put it together at the end, right? But there are several things on the governance front. So your whole data governance, data security thing, all of that, none of this is going to go around any of those existing policies, right? And because we tend in most organizations now to have more of a single identity for users, you're not going to enable anybody to take any actions that they don't already have the permissions and the right to take, right? And so one aspect of governance is that it's making sure that the right people have the right access at the right time, right?
Yeah.
The other part of governance is, how do you then manage all of the data quality and all of that sort of thing? And my point here is always, how are you managing it now when people are making decisions in Excel spreadsheets or whatever? So this can all be incorporated into your existing data strategy, your existing analytics strategy, and your existing governance policies and strategy. That primarily it's just enforcing the right rules on the right users and the right data at the right time.
Yeah. Okay. So I feel like everyone, like a lot of people that I talk to, everyone just seems to still want to export to Excel all the time. Again, we talked about that a little bit earlier, but this next question kind of leads into that. I think for a lot of people, it just feels really safe. So this person is wondering what solutions you might be able to suggest for collecting and storing data, maybe analytic tool agnostic that can be used, with different tools. What would be your best idea for a solution for that?
Sorry, Colette, the sound got really choppy and cut out there. It's coming up on my screen now.
Okay. Man, that California Wi-Fi.
So let's see. Yeah, I don't think it's that. I actually think my computer is overheating here for some reason.
Oh gosh,
I don't
you
have
don't
anything
get a
on,
fire
but
there. No fires today.
um,
There's plenty of those already in California. No extra fires today.
yeah, no. So let's see. Spreadsheets still feel like the safest way to keep data integrity, even data modeling, while tools and new features keep evolving. Curious what solutions there are for collecting and storing data to be analytic tool agnostic. So that is a very broad question. Typically it really depends on what size organization you're in and how early of an adopter your organization is. There is a sea of new data solutions, new data storage solutions, new entire paradigms for how we think about storing data and the temporal nature of data. I mean, this can get very philosophical about what you want to do with that data. Um, Trends that we're seeing in the industry, right, are moving a lot of what we used to use enterprise data warehouse kind of architecture for, and building departmental data marts for specific reporting needs and things like that. That's sort of the old way. What people tend to do now is either they're looking at their data as a more their analytics data as a more sort of ethereal thing that just evolves and changes over time. So you're not necessarily restoring all of that data, right? You're pulling that data out of wherever it lives, and looking at it in real time, and then not necessarily storing that reporting data anywhere. More and more applications are moving to the cloud, and there are tons of these sort of elastic, infinitely scalable data solutions. Things like Databricks and Snowflake and other cloud database providers allow you to spin up, very quickly spin up virtual data warehouses on demand and things like that. So if you're talking about a very small organization, spreadsheets are comfortable, but I think if you really look at, if you do a comparison side by side of pros and cons of spending a little bit of money on some kind of solution to store your data out there in the cloud somewhere versus everybody kind of keeping their own stuff on a shared drive in Excel spreadsheets, it's a pretty easy equation, and it's pretty obvious that it's worth spending a little bit of time, money, and effort to learn about and take advantage of some of those new solutions. And it doesn't have to be a multi-million-dollar project. I'm thinking really small scale now, but like in a very small business, doing your accounting in Excel might be easy, might be what people are used to, etc. An easy option would be moving to something like QuickBooks, right? A lot of people use QuickBooks. QuickBooks is available in the cloud now, so all your data is stored there offsite in redundant storage. It's going to be accessible from anywhere forever. There's lots of security around it if you need that, and so the cost is manageable for most small businesses, right? So that's an example on the other end of the scale from what I talked about in the first place. But keeping your data out there in QuickBooks in that example instead of in spreadsheets is just a much better idea for most businesses.
Yeah, and I know here at Pomerol, and I'm sure this is the same for a lot of companies out there, we have a lot of clients who are moving from on-prem to a cloud-based system like Azure as well, just because they're growing and scaling, and to scale, that's going to have to happen at some point, I believe. So,
yeah.
Okay. Ravid has a very technical question, and I don't understand what it means, but I will put it up on the screen so you can see it. Ravid's always coming in with the clincher questions here. So what do you think about semantic layer versus metric layer? I don't know what that means, so maybe you can clarify.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I will admit, I'm not the most technical person in the world, probably, but so I'm just waiting. Semantic layer versus what? I can't see the question. Everything is very slow.
Semantic layer versus metric layer.
Yeah. Okay. So Look, there are a lot of ways. So for those of us who may not be so familiar with this concept, so metric layer would be, where do we store calculated values and KPIs and things that have been calculated from the data, or in some cases, the data themselves are the things that we actually care about, right? But the way that we present those things, the way that we name them, and the way that we translate those results into a human language is generally an abstraction layer called a semantic layer, right? So this is more about what you're storing versus how you refer to it and get at it, right? And I again here, I think the options are many and varied, and they're evolving constantly because of the new technologies. So that idea of how we abstract data and present it to humans is something that right now is pretty organization specific, I would say. I mean, I think that's a fascinating topic for a whole other.
That's a whole other live session.
If you want to ping me on LinkedIn or something, I would. That's something I find very interesting as a topic. I think it might be a little out of scope.
I'm picturing a Ravi Dan LinkedIn session on the specific topic in the future. That could be cool. So that could be super cool.
I'd be up for that.
All right. We're going to have to wrap up here. So if we didn't get to your question, I'll make sure to go back in and make sure it's answered later. But just to wrap things up, Dan, in like 2 minutes, where do you really see these analytic applications going in the future? Like, what is the next step?
So I mean, I think that's it. It's incorporating a lot of these concepts that we've talked about today, right? So having the right tools in front of the right people, you could take the same marketing catchphrases that we used for enterprise data warehouses, or for big data infrastructure, or for self-service analytics applications in the first place, and kind of apply them to this idea. But I think concretely what that means is that we're going to give users, the right users, more ability to stay within the same analytic environment and take actions in external systems, to do more complex analysis than maybe what they're comfortable doing themselves, right? So you can have a dashboard like this, and you click a button and run some machine learning algorithm against the data, or some statistical analysis, and then pull that data right back into the same analytic environment you're looking at. So you don't have to send something to an IT queue or a data science queue where maybe you'll get something built in a few weeks to answer your question. Those kinds of actions are going to be, they're things that people are enabling in this sort of environment already, right? And I think the use cases for this will continue to grow, and people's comfort with allowing these systems to be more interconnected and more interactive with users will continue to grow as things migrate to the cloud, as people get used to the idea that even your core systems, right, even your core business systems might live in the cloud and be interacted with by all kinds of other applications and other users and things like that. As people become more confident in the security of that, and more confident in their ability to function that way, it is a major change in the whole IT paradigm to think about shipping everything outside of your four walls or your controlled hosted environment of physical hardware, and moving it out to the internet, which is this big, scary, unsafe, unsecured place, right? But it really isn't that anymore. And so that's changing. And I think even within stalwart sort of institutions that tend to be very old school in their IT thinking, like banks, that attitude is shifting. A lot of big applications, big core applications, are moving to the cloud. So that enables a ton of other use cases for this. It enables our analytics to see things across applications without having to build purpose-specific data marts. You can pull the data from the systems where it lives and really do this more for a lot more use cases and a much broader set of applications.
Neat. And I think in terms of our Qlik Writeback extension specifically, I mean, in layman's terms, it's really ready, select, edit, write back. And I know we have a free version on our website. So following the broadcast, we'll send out an email with a link if you want to check out that free version, download it, check it out for yourself. Also, Kate just released a 2023 data trends. It's like this whole book full of like really smart people talking about their ideas for trends and future BI applications. So I don't know if you've had a chance to read it, Dan, but it's really awesome. I'll send you a copy of that to look at. If you guys haven't seen that 2023 trends, you definitely should do that. And to Susan's point earlier, I need a copy of that book, Kate, your ColorWise book. We need copies of the book. And then Kate just wrote this book on colors, and I feel like maybe we can take some of that and apply it to these dashboards. So that's a whole other conversation too. But to wrap things up, thank you, Dan, for joining me on here. It was fun chatting with you this morning.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks to everybody for joining, and thanks to Kate again for the time. And yeah, hope everyone has a great day.
Have an awesome day. The recording will be up as well. So if it was a little bit choppy for you at any point, you can rewatch the recording as many times as you want. So have a great day.